Traveller's Tales is a British game developer that was founded in 1989. Despite producing some good and popular titles over the following decade and a half, their defining success came in 2005 when they partnered with Eidos and Giant Interactive Entertainment to release LEGO Star Wars, the video game. Since then, the studio and the little plastic bricks have been inseparable. At the time of writing, Traveller's Tales has produced 22 LEGO titles overall. In fact, the company hasn't made a non-LEGO game since 2008, and it wouldn't surprise me if their CEO turned out to be the main character from the LEGO movie. But whilst the LEGO games continue to perform well with critics, as well as raking in the studs for all involved, it is a bit of a shame that the Double T don't make anything else these days, as their back catalogue is as deep and colourful as any childhood LEGO box. From platformers and kart races to games based on classic literature, it's all there in Traveller's Tales history, and today we're going to be sharing 10 of them that give the broadest overview of the company's non-LEGO repertoire. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 Traveller's Tales video games that aren't LEGO. Number 10. Leander. Leander, or Galahad if you want to get Sega Mega Drive about this, was made for the Amiga in 1991 and was the first game ever developed by Traveller's Tales. The game puts players in the armoured-plated shoes of the titular knight Leander and tasks them with embarking on a quest to rescue a damsel in distress. This might seem rather generic by today's standards, but back in the early 90s it was new and exciting, and Leander was received extremely well. Video game magazine The One called it classy and graphically amazing, giving it an overall score of 93%. To put that into perspective, that's the same score as The Witcher 3 holds on Metacritic today, so we can expect Henry Cavill to star in a Leander adaptation any day now. Oh, he's so handsome. The game is also known for its ingenious anti-piracy measures, which involved punching a hole into every disc. If an Amiga system was presented with a disc without the hole, then it would freeze and refuse to play the game. That's got to be the only time in history when having a hole in your game disc was a good thing. Well, unless it's a CD, in which case it's quite useless without the hole. So not only was Leander a fun time, but it also showed a glimpse of the ingenuity that Traveller's Tales would later become known for. Number 9. Bram Stoker's Dracula. If you like vampire games but don't want the difficulty of the Castlevania series or the spelling errors of vampire, then we might just have the title for you. Released in 1993, Bram Stoker's Dracula for the SNES and Mega Drive was developed by Traveller's Tales as an adaptation of the Francis Ford Coppola directed film of the same name, which is itself adapted from the 1897 book by Bram Stoker. So really, this game could be called Traveller's Tales Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. And you can see why they shortened it. In this action platformer, players take on the role of the novel's original protagonist, Jonathan Harker, and attempt to rescue his wife from the clutches of the villainous vamp. Not only do you get to play as a classic literary character, but Harker is played in the film by Keanu Reeves, so you too have the chance to be breathtaking. Reviews for the game are harder to come by than a clove of garlic in Drax's kitchen, but the ones that are out there are quite positive. From a historical viewpoint, this is the first time that Traveller's Tales adapted an existing property, something they would become very famous for in the years to come. Number 8. Toy Story. Speaking of adapting existing properties, Traveller's Tales knocked on the door of the House of Mouse in 1995 and were greeted with permission to transform one of their most beloved movies into a video game. The studio took the adventures of everybody's favourite paranoid cowboy and delusional space ranger and turned them into a side-scrolling platformer for the Sega Genesis and SNES. This side-scrolling adventure closely follows the plot of the first Toy Story film, and players take control of Woody as he forms a fast friendship with Buzz, but not before first trying to murder him. Whoa, steady on there, partner. Whilst Toy Story was not the first game Traveller's Tales made with Disney, that would be 1994's Mickey Mania: The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse, a game that took less time to finish than it did to say its title, it is almost certainly their most famous and beloved, garnering high review scores across the board from various gaming publications. This game and its huge success proved that Traveller's Tales could adapt a big property and do it justice. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that without Toy Story, Traveller's Tales would not be what it is today. Number 7. Sonic 3D Blast. Sonic 3D Blast not only celebrated the Blue Blur's 5th birthday, but it also took him into 3D for the very first time. The game features everything you'd expect from a Sonic outing: Chaos Emeralds, Robotnik, doing a run, but it also involves having to rescue some birds called the Flickies. You know, everyone's favourite characters from the Sonic series, the Flickies. Traveller's Tales took on this project when Sonic Team switched focus to Nights into Dreams, which is widely regarded as one of the best Sega Saturn games of all time. Did Sonic 3D Blast manage to compete with this? Well, the short answer is no, and the long answer is no with lots of O's. Whilst this game is now seen as one of the worst Sonic entries ever, at the time, the reviews were much kinder. Critics in the 90s actually praised the updated gameplay and graphics despite the fact that some of its visual design was enough to make anyone reach for the nearest sick bucket. It may not have held up so well, but Sonic 3D Blast was yet another big license under Traveler's Tales' belt and therefore a key stage in their evolution. Just don't read any modern reviews of the game, you'd only make them cry. Number 6. Rascal. Mascot platformers in the late 90s were, to quote Grandpa Simpson, the style at the time. The monumental success of series such as Spyro the Dragon and another series, which we'll get to later, led to waves and waves of imitators, especially on the PlayStation. One such imitator was Rascal, a time-hopping platformer developed by, you guessed it, Naughty Dog. Of course, I'm joking, it was Traveler's Tales. Players assume the role of Callum Rascal Clockwise as he attempts to rescue his time machine inventing father from Chronon, who claims to be the master of time but looks more like Galactus mixed with Lord Farquaad from Shrek. Whilst Rascal was praised for its technological achievements including fast load times, the rest of the game went down quite poorly with critics. Everything from its clunky controls to poor camera angles were lambasted, and the game has appeared in several publications' lists of worst ever PS1 games. So, this goes to show that even great developers don't always hit it out of the park 100% of the time. But hey, fun fact, the main character and some of the enemies in Rascal were designed by the Jim Henson Creature Shop, which brings us nicely on to number 5. Muppets Race Mania. The original entry for this spot was going to be 2005's F1 Grand Prix, a licensed Formula 1 simulator that Traveler's Tales made for the PSP. That was before we came across a racing game that was a bit more, well, Muppet-y. Muppet Race Mania was released in 2000 for the original PlayStation. If you hadn't already worked it out, it's a kart racer starring everyone's favourite troupe of unhinged puppets, the Muppets. Players can choose from 25 of Henson's finest creations, including Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, Beaker, and the icon that is the Swedish Chef. Tracks are inspired by a number of different Muppet movies, including The Muppets Take Manhattan, Muppets Treasure Island, and The Muppet Christmas Carol, though thankfully there isn't a boss battle against the Ghost of Christmas yet to come. That thing still gives me nightmares. Whilst Muppets Race Mania brought nothing new to the karting genre and its reviews were middling, the game has built up a cult following and is a curious hidden gem in the histories of one of the most enduring media franchises of all time. Plus it's better than some boring F1 sim, that's for sure. Number 4. Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. What can I say about the original Crash Bandicoot trilogy that hasn't already been said? On this very channel, no less. As for everything after those 3 games, well, things started to go downhill for the marauding marsupial when original Crash designer Mark Cerny left the project after a falling out with publisher Universal Interactive. This meant that Traveler's Tales, who began working on the series in 2001, had just 12 months to redesign the game from scratch. As a result, the final product was, well, it was a bit rubbish, if we're being completely honest. It was labelled a carbon copy of the previous Crash installment and was criticised for its poor graphics and the fact that it was way more difficult than its predecessors. Maybe we were being a little too kind when we just called it rubbish. Despite the poor end result, Traveler's Tales can't really be blamed for its failure, as they had their backs against the wall with this project. Clearly they did the best they could though, and the studio was deemed good enough to take control of the next Crash game, Crash Twinsanity. Granted, that game wasn't very well received either, but well, maybe we should just move on. Number 3. Haven Call of the King. The story of Haven Call of the King is one of triumph, tragedy, and a really big bell. I'd like to assure you that's me being literal and not making any sort of innuendo. Double T partnered with publisher Midway Games to release this boundary-pushing title back in 2002. Using what Midway coined free-former gameplay, Haven blended genres such as platforming, shoot-'em-up, and puzzle-solving to create a truly unique experience the likes of which gamers had never seen before. Unfortunately, many gamers still haven't seen it, as Haven sold poorly. So poorly, in fact, that its 2 planned sequels were cancelled. As though that wasn't bad enough, the game ended on a cliffhanger, and so for anyone dying to know what happened next, the whole saga was a complete disaster. Actually, it's not fair to call the whole saga a complete disaster, as the game does still have some fans today, like Peter Austin. However, when your game sells so badly that you can't even give those fans a complete ending, you have to chalk that up as yet another tick in the loss column for Traveler's Tales. Let's hope the next game on this list didn't turn up on, I don't know, an episode of Worst Games Ever or something. Number 2. Transformers the Game. Yes, after the better part of 2 years away from TripleJump Towers thanks to the virus that shall not be named, the first game that myself and Peter were treated to on Worst Games Ever was this shocking movie tie-in. Based on the Michael Bay Explodathon, which, to be fair, it describes most of, if not all of Michael Bay's films, Transformers the game allows players to step into the giant metallic shoes of the titular fighting machines. All your favourite Transformers are here. There's Plane Boy, Truck Guy, Megantron, Amazon Prime, and of course, Bumblebee starring John Cena. The game is your typical third-person action-adventure shooter with the unique selling point of having 2 different campaigns based on the movie's 2 warring factions, the Autobots and the Decepticons. Unfortunately, when both campaigns feature janky gameplay and repetitive missions, then is there really much point in having 2? Yet another poor effort from Traveller's Tales then, but don't feel too bad for them, as they'd already made the first 2 LEGO Star Wars games by this point. Maybe they should have made this one a LEGO game too, couldn't have been any worse. Number 1. The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. Here it is, folks, the last game that Traveller's Tales made before it started making LEGO games exclusively, and it's another badly reviewed movie tie-in. Great. Traveller's Tales had developed the first Narnia tie-in game, another Worst Games Ever alumni, so it made sense for them to do the sequel too. Prince Caspian is based on the second Narnia film, also called Prince Caspian, which introduced the world to the character of Prince Caspian. Do the words Prince and Caspian no longer feel like real words to anyone else? Much like the first Narnia game, there are many elements of Prince Caspian that feel very similar to the LEGO games. The puzzle-based gameplay, the large roster of characters, the interactive environments, it's all there. Not surprising then that in 2009, the year after Prince Caspian came out, Traveller's Tales released LEGO Indiana Jones 2 and haven't stopped making LEGO games since. The developers have been on a real journey to get to where they are now. Whilst the success of the LEGO series is strong enough that the company may never make anything else ever again, they've left behind a back catalogue of non-LEGO titles that is interesting, innovative, and a delight to look back on. Well, for the most part.